In Brazil, student organizations demonstrate against budget cuts in the education sector and in rejection of the government of Jair Bolsonaro. In Ecuador, social sectors conduct a great national mobilization. They reject the government's economic measures, including the increase in fuel prices. Dozens of people reported dead in Russia, Algeria, Italy, and Greece. Millions of hectares of forest destroyed by the flames. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your host, Gladys Quesada. Now we begin with the news. In Brazil, because students' organizations demonstrate this Wednesday against budget cuts in the education sector and also in rejection of the government of Jair Bolsonaro. On the occasion of the Students' Day, the National Union of Students called for mobilizations to denounce the budget cuts in universities, which leave those institutions in a state of emergency, without resources and at risk of closing doors. The students' organizations also warn about the omission of the Ministry of Education, which does not present investment projects for the sector, nor proposals on resources to adapt the schools for the safe return to classes. They denounce that such determination represents a denial of the pandemic and harms millions of low-income students, resulting in 46% less enrollment than in 2020, returning to the level of 2005. And we stay in Brazil because the lower house of the National Congress rejected and filed a bill to implement printed vote receipts pushed for by President Jair Bolsonaro. The president of the Chamber of Deputies, Arthur Lira, announced that 229 deputies voted against the proposal and 218 in favor, with one abstention. Likewise, 64 deputies did not turn out to vote, thus making it difficult for the government to reach the 308 votes necessary for the proposed amendment to the Constitution to go ahead. Hours before the ruling, the legislators had denounced a parade of military personnel and war tanks in the vicinity of the Congress, which they called an act of intimidation. The foreign ministers of 9 countries hold a virtual meeting convened by Panama in order to seek solutions to the migration crisis in the so-called Darien Plug from the Gulf of Urabá. The diplomats are to discuss cross-border cooperation and the timely exchange of information to provide specific responses and definitive measures regarding the wave of people crossing their borders without prior permission. This meeting was preceded by bilateral Colombian-Panamanian meetings, where they agreed to regulate the number of people crossing the common border through the hostile Darien jungle, most of them heading to the United States. The plenary of the Colombian Senate approved on Tuesday the intervention of former Colombian military in mercenary operations in the world, and in particular in the assassination that took place in Haiti in July. The Minister of National Defense, Diego Molano Aponte, and the Foreign Affairs, Marta Lucía Ramírez, as well as the Superintendent of Surveillance and Private Security, Orlando Alfonso Clavijo, were summoned to a debate on political control. The officials must disclose the measures adopted by the government of President Iván Duque to prevent the participation of retired Colombian military personnel in mercenary activities abroad that may threaten the sovereignty of other states. Senator Iván Cepeda, who proposed the debate, said he will send a request to President Duque to officially apologize to the Haitian people for the participation of national mercenaries in the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse, which took place last July 7th. In Venezuela, authorities of the electoral power received a representation of the Special Commission for Dialogue, Peace and National Reconciliation of the National Assembly. After the meeting, members of parliament expressed their support to the process of preparation and auditing for the upcoming November elections. The vice president of the commission, Luis Martinez, stated that they received a detailed explanation of the voting, counting and final tallying process fully warranted for the regional elections. Martinez also emphasized that while dialogue is taking place in Mexico, the commission continues its rhythm of meetings with different national sectors to achieve the country's reinstitutionalization. In this context, a sector of the Venezuelan opposition announced its participation in the dialogue process with the Bolivarian government to be held in Mexico. The leader of the right-wing party Justice First, Enrique Capriles, explained that the opposition delegation will include the Secretary General of that political organization, Tomás Guanipa. Despite maintaining serious differences with the national government and being part of the stabilizing processes, the opposition leadership will seek to participate in the negotiations which aim, among other things, to reach agreements regarding economic and social issues. And Chile's lower chamber began discussions on a fourth withdrawal of the pension funds. As the meeting takes place in the legislative plenary session, President Sebastián Piñera finally decided to extend the emergency family benefit for 2 months. The measure was well received from the ruling coalition. The deputy of the National Renewal Party, Gonzalo Fuenzalida, pointed out that it will allow Chilean families to better cope the economic effects resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. Whereas in the opposition, the deputy of the Social Green Regionalist Federation, Alejandra Sepúlveda, said this measure is still insufficient due to the constant increase in the cost of living, which means that the money provided by the emergency family income requires an increase. In Chile, during the vote of the pardon bill for the political prisoners of the revolt, demonstrators changed themselves to Frances and tried to storm La Moneda presidential palace. A score of demonstrators arrived at La Moneda Palace to demonstrate in favor of the bill to pardon the so-called prisoners of the revolt. In its social networks, the Coordinating Assembly of High School Students explained that the demonstrators changed themselves together, demanding the modification and approval of the Pardon Act. They also mentioned the acts of repression against their comrades and demanded their freedom in order to advance in justice and reparation for the state repression's victims and their relatives. And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back. Ecuador's social sectors conduct a great national mobilization that reject the government's economic measures, including the increase in fuel prices. The United Front of Workers called for demonstrations, and it is expected that the National Union of Educators, high school and university students, which denounce impacts of the fare increase, will join. In addition, the heavy transportation sector announced that they will protest because they do not have the resources to work due to the increases in fuel prices. Meanwhile, the Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities of Ecuador, CONAIE, stated that Guillermo Lazo's administration has decided to maintain the same policy of former President Lenín Moreno, influenced by the International Monetary Fund. On Tuesday, the Attorney General of Bolivia, Wilfredo Chávez, denounced that the Organization of American States, the OAS, conducted fraud in the 2019 elections as the regional body failed to carry out a real audit. The OAS rejection of the 2019 electoral process played a major role in the coup that ousted former Bolivian President Evo Morales. However, although irregularities with the OAS report have been denounced by even U.S. lawmakers, such as Bernie Sanders, the Bolivian Attorney General demonstrated that there was no investigation to support any of the claims. Chávez's statements come after this Monday, August 9th, the OAS ratified the findings of irregularities in the 2019 electoral process, a document rejected by the Bolivian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. On the other hand, the Attorney General's office stated this Tuesday that it will not debate on a pronouncement or document of political nature and insisted on closing the electoral fraud case, referring to the report presented by the OAS lacking even signatories on its authorship. And we stay in Bolivia because the Secretary General of the Bolivian Attorney General's Office, Edwin Quispe, revealed on Tuesday details about the irregularities of a respirator's purchase conducted by the former de facto government of Yanin Áñez for more than $2 million. According to Quispe, the ventilators do not meet the minimum requirements to be used in clinicals and hospitals.
They do not have the ventilatory mode, nor the trigger of sensitivity, a very important feature for the ventilator to detect the inspiratory efforts made by the patient, so that the physician therapist can establish the phase that corresponds to them within their treatment. They do not have the visualization of the measurement of VO2, which is the percentage of oxygen measurement, a fundamental aspect for critical patients. It does not have the blender, the mixer or compressed medical oxygen. The expertise establishes conclusively that due to this lack of fundamental characteristics, the respirator cannot be used technically in the intensive care units of the services by COVID or not COVID.
President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said his government has sent an invitation to his U.S. counterpart Joe Biden for a possible visit to Mexico. The announcement comes after the Mexican president met with a high-level U.S. delegation headed by Biden's National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan. During his usual morning conference, AMLO informed that it was agreed to establish a working agenda for a possible meeting with Biden, scheduled for September, in order to address the issue of migration, as well as cooperation programs to boost development in Central America and southern Mexico. This meeting will seek to address issues already discussed with Vice President Kamala Harris, who visited the country in early June. And tropical storm Fred expected to strike Caribbean islands very soon. Authorities in the Dominican Republic declared a state of emergency as the natural phenomenon moves towards the west of the nation with winds of up to 65 kilometers per hour. According to the emergency operations centers, the storm was about 220 kilometers southeast of Santo Domingo at 4 a.m., with maximum sustained winds of 65 kilometers per hour and is moving northwest at 28 kilometers per hour. For this reason, the COE maintains the yellow alert in at least 10 provinces. Altagracia, La Romana, El Gran Santo Domingo, San Pedro de Narcóriz, El Ceibo, San Cristóbal, Monseñor Noel, and San José de Ocoa are already on red alert. A preliminary hearing was held Wednesday in London after the U.S. government appealed a decision earlier this year to prevent the extradition of Julian Assange to the United States to face espionage charges there. Arriving at the hearing, Assange's partner Stella Morris accused the U.S. of exploiting the inherently unfair extradition agreements in order to arbitrarily prolong the imprisonment of an innocent man accused of practicing journalism. Britain's extradition agreement with the U.S. says that the process can be blocked if, by reasons of the person's mental or physical condition, it will be unjust or oppressive to extradite him. The prosecution of WikiLeaks founder has been condemned by journalists and human rights groups who say that it undermines free speech and imperils journalists. An Argentine football star, Lionel Messi, has officially signed for French football club Paris Saint-Germain, bringing his long-term association with FC Barcelona to an end. The French club said in a statement that the Argentine superstar is signing a 2-year deal with an option of a 3rd year. On signing for PSG, Messi said, "I am excited to begin a new chapter of my career at Paris Saint-Germain. Everything about the club matches my football ambitions." The 34-year-old soccer player was said to extend his 21-year stay at Barcelona by signing a new 5-year deal this summer, but the club announced that financial and structural obstacles meant the contract could not be fulfilled. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. Dozens of people are reported dead in Russia, Algeria, Italy and Greece, as well as millions of hectares of forests have been destroyed by the flames. Forest fires continue to tear through Siberia as Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered officials to send in reinforcements on the ground to try to control the situation. The death toll from the fires raging in the northwest Kabylia region of Algeria since last Monday has risen to 42, 25 of whom were soldiers who died during firefighting operations. Numerous fires are still active on the Greek island of Evia, while in Turkey there is only one fire left in the western province of Mugla. Meanwhile, in southern Italy, especially in Sicily and Calabria, army officers have been deployed to help fight the fires. Temperatures hit 47 degrees Celsius near Syracuse, with meteorologists warning that Italy's all-time record of 48.5 degrees in Sicily in 1999 could be beaten. The Italian Health Ministry issued red alerts for extreme heat in the areas in and around the cities of Rome, Bari, Rieti and Campobasso. It is expected that by Sunday the current heat wave will start to subside. And rescue teams are making progress in the evacuation of a Turkish hospital that was affected by the floods as a result of the sudden rains in the last few days. Turkey's health ministry, Fahrettin Koca, reported that out of 45 patients, 4 are in intensive care. Interior Minister Süleyman Soylu reported that water levels had reached 3 to 4 meters, forcing locals to take shelter on rooftops where they were being evacuated by helicopter. The evacuations came less than a month after heavy rains caused flooding in the northeast of the country, where at least 6 deaths have been reported so far. The World Health Organization said it will soon begin testing 3 drugs currently used against other diseases to see if they might help patients suffering from the coronavirus. The UN Health Agency said the drugs will be adapted into the next phase of its ongoing global research into identified potential treatments anti-COVID-19. The drugs being tested were chosen by an independent panel based on the likelihood they could prevent deaths in people hospitalized for serious coronavirus. They include artesunate, a malaria drug, the cancer drug imatinib, and infliximab, currently used in people with diseases of the immune system.
And we need health workers that are trained to use them in a safe environment. We already have many tools to prevent, test for, and treat COVID-19, including oxygen, dexamethasone, and IL-6 blockers. But we need more for patients at all ends of the clinical spectrum, from mild to severe disease, and we need health workers that are trained to use them in a safe environment.
The Pan American Health Organization on Wednesday announced a new initiative for member states to acquire COVID-19 vaccines at competitive prices and prices that countries can afford.
Pleased to announce that PAHO is offering our member states a new opportunity to access COVID-19 vaccines. The revolving fund is now receiving requests for countries in the region for COVID-19 vaccines for the last 3 months of 2021 and for the calendar year 2022. So far, more than 20 countries have formally expressed interest, and the number is growing by the day. And here's why this is so important. The revolving fund is a mechanism for providing high-quality vaccines at competitive prices and prices that countries can afford.
And Libya launches its largest COVID-19 vaccination center in the capital Tripoli in an effort to speed up inoculations and catch up with the rising number of cases.
There are 60 vaccination points. The vaccination center is considered the largest in North Africa and in the whole of Africa. It was opened to allow the vaccination of as many Libyans as possible to protect them from the coronavirus. We call on the people to get vaccinated as a center. Vaccines and doctors are still available. The center is open from 9 in the morning to 6 in the evening. We hope to be able to vaccinate between 2,000 and 3,000 people today.
Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said that halting COVID-19 is an urgent priority. He also called for more vaccine imports and production.
In my opinion, today, the issue of the coronavirus disease is the country's primary and urgent issue. The infections and deaths are truly painful. It is easy to say, but when you look at it, that more than 500 families go into mourning in one day, it is no small thing. Efforts must increase for both imports and domestic production, so that they can provide the people with vaccines in whatever way they can.
In Spain, the National Drug and Health Supplies Agency authorized the first clinical trial of a domestically produced anti-COVID-19 vaccine. The drug, developed by the Hipra company, is undergoing studies to determine its safety and efficacy by means of its application in dozens of volunteers. The company announced that the vaccine is based on two recombinant proteins corresponding to the alpha and beta variants of the virus, and also said that an adjuvant component which boosts the immune response. The product can be stored at temperatures between 2 and 8 degrees centigrade, which facilitates the logistics for its distribution. Additionally, Hipra said it has the capacity to produce 400 million doses during 2022. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm your host, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.